Today's tutorial is going to be for the brand new patterns from Backstitch and Baste. We have the Pip and the Willow. Now these patterns can be purchased separately or in a bundle. The Pip is the smaller of the two. It's considered maybe like kind of a fashion backpack or a backpack for young kids. The Willow is a slightly larger version and would be more of a junior high kind of traditional backpack. For my version today, I'm using cotton woven mostly. I'm going to be using vinyl for the gusset, but for everything else it's going to be a cotton woven. My prints today on the Willow are both from Jane R. Edwards. I do have SF101 on everything, and then on the exterior pieces I am adding a layer of foam kept out of the seam allowance. On the vinyl pieces I'm just going to add a Decaville light to help with a little bit of structure. You could do foam on the gusset pieces as well if you wanted to do that. For Pip on the exterior, it's going to be another J&R Edwards print. The lining for this one is from Oh So Lovely, and I'm doing the same things with the interfacing on that one. So let's go ahead and get started sewing this. At the end of this video, we'll do a size comparison of both of these to show you what it looks like. But just as a quick glance, here is the Pip. Here is, let's just put that right there in the middle, and let's get everything else out of the way so you can see that a little bit clearer. So you can see there is quite a bit of difference around there. I will show both of them together at the end for another size comparison. To get this pattern started, I'm going to be working on the back side of both first. The first thing I'll do is I'll add these little connectors here. I have a rectangular ring and I'm using webbing. The pattern does give you the instructions if you want to use a cotton woven or a vinyl of how to fold it and things like that. The pattern also tells you where to place this connector. You measure up from the bottom and you'll make a line, and then you will have this edge of the webbing on that line, and it'll be going at a diagonal, so a slant upward. And she actually even tells you how much of the top portion of this portion will be hanging off, so you have a really good idea of where to place this at on the back of the bag. All I'm going to do now is I'm going to baste this in place. I'm going to have one on this side and one on the other side. I'll repeat the same thing for the Pip. This bigger size is the Willow. What I'm going to do after I get off camera is I'm going to add a rivet in the middle, kind of rivet these in place here. Two reasons. One, I like the way it looks and I don't want to have this flopping around, so it'll kind of secure that D-ring without me sewing it. And the second reason, the designer says, it can help with the integrity of the strap, especially this bigger size where you might be carrying bigger things and it'll be a heavier load. So that is my first steps, to baste these connectors on and then rivet them in place. After you have your two connectors on, what you're going to do is you're going to use the pattern measurements to make a mark. First thing you do is you find the bottom center of the bag and then you measure up to that mark. You're going to draw kind of like an U shape. It's going to have two side brackets and then a straight line in the middle, and that is going to be to place this hanger. You can use webbing or you can use a cotton woven or vinyl to make your hanger strap. I'm just using webbing. And so what you do on that U on the side, you put one side of the webbing. It will be inside this bracket, and then you will come over to the other side and place it. This helps you to keep everything straight in a line when you're sewing this. All you're going to do is just baste across the edge. If you wanted, you could sew a square onto each side of the webbing. I don't worry too much because I'm going to be putting the strap bar over it. You could add rivets after you add that strap bar, and that would even help secure it too. But I'm just going to baste this in place. So I'll take this over to the sewing machine, make sure that I keep both sides of the webbing inside that bracket, and just sew across with 1/8 of an inch. Here is how it looks on the Willow. For the Pip, you will do the same steps, but just definitely would have different measurements. So for the Pip, I will do the same thing and baste this one into place as well. Now that we have the hanger bar attached, it's time to add straps to this bag. I'm going to use webbing on mine, but you could definitely use a cotton woven or vinyl. The pattern does give you the instructions on how to do that. I start by making sure I melt the ends of both of my pieces of webbing just to make sure it doesn't fray. Then I take an adjustable bar and I go through the bottom and then out through the top. I'm going to fold just a little bit of that to the back and then fold it again, and then I'm going to just sew across here to secure that, and that will give me a finished edge and have the least chance of this fraying. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this strap piece and I'm going to flip it and place it right sides together. So I'm looking at the wrong side of my webbing, and I'm going to lay it on my backpack. And then I'm going to feed this raw edge through that rectangle ring at the bottom, making sure that I don't have anything twisted. And then I'm going to take that free edge and feed it up and over and through, just like I did the first time, that adjuster bar. I'm going to kind of tighten this up, because what I'm going to do is, this is how it looks. Now we're looking at the right side and we can see the right side is facing up. I want to attach this here, but I don't want it to sew like that. I want it to come down from the top. So you can see I'm going to flip it up out of the way and make for sure that when I wear it, I'm able to see the right side of the adjuster bar and my webbing. Now the pattern tells you exactly how to place this. You're given a couple of points to make to draw a line. The main thing is you want this to kind of angle so that it will angle out away. It's not going to be straight up and down like this. It's going to angle out a little bit, and that's going to give you a better fit and a better way to wear this when it's sitting on your back, and it'll stay on your shoulders a little bit better. So use those pattern measurements to make that mark and that placement. Place your backpack strap on it, and then let's baste this into place. Do a few common sense checks if you want. Try it on, make sure it's working the way you want. So I can see that mine works perfectly and fits the right way. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go off camera to attach the other one. Then we'll come back and add that strap bar. To add the strap bar that goes across the raw ends of this webbing, what you want to do is you want to use the pattern measurements to measure up from the bottom. I highly suggest, after you have everything measured and what you think is the perfect placement, to set this down on your cutting mat just to make for sure. I find it very easy to get even just a little bit off, and then you notice it later. So the designer tells us that we could use double-sided tape here. I just use a little bit of glue to kind of secure this in place so that it will not shift while I sew it. I'm going to sew down both long ends of this webbing. If you wanted, you could sew again to have 2 rows of stitching on each long edge, or even just one in the middle. And you could add rivets if you want. A lot of options here if you want to make this a little bit more secure, but I'm just going to do the 1 row of stitching on each side. I have both of my back panels complete for the willow and the pip. I'm going to set these aside and I'm going to pull out my front piece. Here is the front exterior for both. Now this would be a great place for a panel, for some embroidery, maybe a tag, anything a little bit fancy and unique, but I really just want to keep mine simple. So I'm not doing anything to these. So that means my front's already done. What I'm going to do is I'm going to flip this to the wrong side. I'm going to pull out one of my lining pieces and place it wrong sides together. So I'm looking at the right side of my lining, flip it over, right side of my exterior, and I'm just going to baste these in place. This will mean that I have this lining and the exterior for the front completely done and ready for the gusset. If you wanted to add pockets or anything fancy to this lining piece, you can. I'm just keeping it simple and following the pattern directions for how to do this. Now that I have the front exterior and the lining front attached, I'm just going to set these aside. The next thing I'll do to these is work on adding the gusset to them, but now we're going to work on the back lining piece. To start the back lining piece, go ahead and take your two slip pocket pieces, place them right sides together, and then just sew across the top of these two pieces with the seam allowance given in the pattern. After you have that stitched together, I'm going to go ahead and press this seam flat and then fold these two pieces wrong sides together and top stitch across the top and then baste all around to make this just one piece. Then we'll set it aside. We're going to attach it to that back lining piece, but we want to add the zipper pocket first. Here's how my slip pocket looks after I basted and top stitch. I'm going to set this aside while I work on the zipper pocket. To make the zipper pocket on the lining piece, turn that lining piece so that it is wrong sides facing up. The pattern gives you the measurements for a box to draw. You will measure from the bottom up, or you can use the template on the pattern piece. But you draw this on the wrong side. Then you flip it over to the front, to the right side, take your lining zipper pocket piece and place it right sides down, and the pattern tells you how far down from the top you're going to measure, and you're going to have it centered. Once you have that in place, you can add some clips there, and then you're going to turn it back over and you're going to sew it from the wrong side. You're going to sew directly on that box you made. After you sew around on that box, you are just going to cut directly in the middle. I just make a snip to start it by folding it in half, and then I open it up. Make sure I'm cutting through all layers. Go straight down the middle. And then whenever I'm about a half of an inch away, I'm going to make a inverted triangle to get as close as I can to the stitches in the corner. You need to get right up against those stitches without going through them. If not, you'll have some gathering in those corner areas. Once you have the opening through here, you're going to push that lining through, and you'll definitely need to take it over to the ironing board, or at least I feel like you do, to get everything to go through properly. So when you're pushing the lining through, you're going to roll your seam so that you really don't see any of the lining from this exterior side. Lots of times what I'll do is I'll butterfly this top seam and the bottom seam and iron them flat and then press everything open. But I'm going to take this over to the iron and press this open. Then when I come back, we will install the zipper and the second lining piece. After you have pressed the lining to the wrong side, go ahead and pull out a piece of zipper tape, and we're just going to have the zipper teeth centered in the middle of this box and stitch all the way around the box to attach the zipper to this lining main panel. My zipper is a little bit longer than what the pattern called for, just because it's a little bit easier for me, and so I just have the extra hanging off. Make sure I have plenty on both sides. And then I don't use tape, pins, clips, anything. I just kind of sew it around. Sometimes it's not perfect, so if that stresses you out, go ahead and use tape or pins, whatever you feel most comfortable with. I'm going to sew it 1/8 of an inch around the opening on this box. Once you have the zipper attached here to the front, go ahead and flip this whole piece over. Take your remaining zipper lining piece, place it right sides together with the other one, and then you're just going to sew all the way around here. We don't need to leave an opening because we are binding this bag. So let's go ahead and add just a few clips in place because we'll actually be sewing from the right side of the lining panel. It doesn't really matter too much where you start and stop, so whatever you feel comfortable with. When sewing around the zipper here at the top, I like to sew as close as I can to it, but you don't have to. It's just a personal preference, and then I can trim some of the extra zipper tape off. I also go back and forth a time or two just to make for sure those stitches don't come out. Go ahead and trim the lining and your extra zipper tape off of this piece, and then we will attach the slip pocket. I have the zipper pocket, the lining trimmed all the way up on the other side, and then I have the slip pocket. I'm just laying it right sides up on top of this lining piece, matching up the sides and the bottoms. Now I do feel like I should have probably used a contrast. I could have used the same print from the exterior, but I didn't, and I'm not going to cut anything else out. Now I'm just going to baste this slip pocket around the sides and the bottom. At this point, you can take this lining piece and baste it wrong sides together with your back exterior piece, just like we did for the front. We will set both these pieces aside, and then we'll start working on our gusset. To start making the gusset, we are first going to pull out the zipper panels. You will have 2 exterior zipper panels, 2 lining zipper panels, and 1 piece of zipper tape. My zipper tape is longer than it needs to be. This is the last piece of this zipper tape I had, so I didn't even bother cutting it down. You do not need yours this long. I do not have a pull on my zipper tape yet. I always wait till after I sew on both of the zipper panels before I add the pull, just for convenience. My lining is woven. I have that layer of SF101. My exteriors are vinyl, and I did add a layer of Decaville Light, kept out of the seam allowance on them just for a little bit of extra structure. I put my lining piece right sides up, and then I just lay the zipper tape across that top edge, the top long edge, and have the zipper tape right sides up. I match up those 2 long edges, and then I just sew all the way across. This is just a basting stitch. This is not a necessary stitch. If you're someone who feels comfortable sewing the exterior and lining together, just make a traditional zipper sandwich and skip this basting step. After you have that lining basted in place, go ahead and take your exterior piece, place it right sides together, match up both the short and the long ends, and then sew across the long edge with the seam allowance given in the pattern. This is your true stitch, not your basting stitch. Once you have those sewn together, go ahead and pull them wrong sides together. Then we're going to baste this raw edge close and top stitch all along the finished edge. I'll do both of those stitches at 1/8 of an inch apart. Here's that first side of the gusset, and so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to repeat those same steps for the other 2 zipper panel pieces. After I have the other side completed, then I will add the zipper pulls on. I'm going to use 2, trim down the zipper tape, and have it ready for the next step. So I have my zipper panels completed. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add the sides. We have an exterior and a lining side for each of the ends of the zipper panels. I'm going to place these right sides together. So the lining is right sides together with the lining, and the exterior is going to be right sides together with the exterior. I'm going to clip these in place. You're just going to make a zipper sandwich here on the side, and you're going to sew across with the full seam allowance given in the pattern. After you do that, go ahead and pull these 2 apart, and then let's go ahead and top stitch this top edge where we just sewn closed, and then you'll baste all around the other 3 sides just to make this one complete piece. I'm going to complete the steps that we just did to attach the side panels to the other side. I'll do that off camera, but before I do that, I'm going to pull out the side pocket pieces. I have 4 of those pieces, 2 exterior, 2 lining. Mine are the same print. One, the exterior side, or what I'm considering the exterior side, I interface this with SF101. This lining piece, I did not choose to interface it with anything. So what I do is I put these right sides together, and then I just sew across the top. Just as a note, the bigger piece is the top, the smaller piece is going to be the bottom. And so I'm going to sew these with the seam allowance given in the pattern. Then you can press that seam open, and then you're going to flip these pieces so they are wrong side together, and then we're going to top stitch and baste all the way around. There's an option to make this slip pocket an elastic pocket and have elastic and a gather top. I'm not doing that option, but the instructions are given in the pattern. Now that I have this slip pocket top stitched and basted all around, I'm going to attach it to this side panel piece. So I'll attach it at the bottom. I'm going to have the bottom flush. It should match up perfectly, but you can see at the top it's a little bit too big there. So what we're going to do is matching up the sides with each other, and that'll give it a lift in the middle. So you can see it has that slight lift on it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to baste all around to connect this pocket to the side panel piece. I'm going to go off camera and repeat those same steps to add the side panel and the side pockets to the other side. To finish up our gusset, we will have to add the base piece and have it attached on both sides to make a complete loop. You should have an exterior and a lining base piece. On my exterior piece, I have the layer of Decaville Light that's kept out of the seam allowance. On the lining piece, I just have SF101. You could actually add the Decaville Light or foam, fleece, whatever you're using on both of these pieces. To get these started sewing, just take your exterior piece and place it right sides together with your side exterior piece. So that means it will be at the bottom of the pocket. Then I flip it over and I place the lining piece right sides together with the lining side. And I'm just going to clip these all together and sew them at once. But you could baste them if you prefer. I'm just going to sew across the bottom with the seam allowance given in the pattern. After we have the two base pieces sewn to the side, we flip them so they are wrong sides together, and then I'm just going to top stitch along that edge that we just sewed. Once we have that top stitch, then we're going to take these two free edges and we're going to attach them to the other side. So the first thing I do is I take my exterior piece and I bring it all the way to the exterior, and I'm going to go ahead and clip and baste here. It's not a necessary step, but just where we're going to have a couple things moving around, I feel like it was easier to baste first so that we have less chance of shifting. So now we have the two exteriors attached. We have to get this lining over to this other side so that we can attach them right sides together. So I'm just going to do the traditional way to do that, which you just roll it up. So once I have it rolled pretty tightly, then I'm able to flip this lining piece so that it's right sides together. Add a few clips there at the top so you can see it's all in there. If this is too bulky, you could push it out, but it's really, there's plenty of room in my opinion to get a good seam allowance here. So now I'll just sew with that full seam allowance. Now that I have that, I need to top stitch, so I'll pull everything out, flip these pieces so they are wrong sides together. Here is that side I originally top stitched, so now I'm going to baste down one long side to just connect these pieces, then I'll top stitch across the side we just sewn, then baste again on that other long edge, just so everything's connected and easier to attach to the bag. Make sure you take the time while you're sewing to keep everything in line. You don't want things shifting, and this is the part where things could shift easily. So now my gusset is finished. It's ready to attach to the front of the bag. I will attach it to the front panel first. The way I will get that started is I'll find the half mark, so the center mark on the top, the center mark on that base piece, and then I'll find those same marks on my front panel. I'm going to go ahead and clip this gusset onto that front panel, but I'll come back and talk to you about a few things and then we'll sew it together. I have the gusset clipped right sides together with the front panel. Everything fit perfectly. It looks great. I had no problems with the gusset fitting. What I'm going to do now is I'm just going to baste around this. For me, it's a little bit easier just to do 1/8 of an inch to make sure I catch everything. Then I will come back with the bonding and do that full seam allowance, and that will make sure that I don't miss any edges and I get the best chance of a really nice shape on this backpack. So I'm going to have the panel on the bed of my machine. My gusset will be up. You could sew either way, but I feel like this option is just a little bit better, or I feel like you have a better chance of getting a better fit doing it this way. When I come down to this side corner, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of pinch it to hold it in place while I get as close as I can to that corner, and then I will do a full 90-degree pivot to try to keep that really nice sharp edge there. This corner is tucking in so a little bit, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my hemostats and kind of pull it so I can get the best chance of getting it all the way up against that edge without losing any of that corner at the bottom. Here is how that basting stitch looks on this front side. I've also already completed that same step for the pip, so the willow and the pip are both at the same place. Now what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to bind the front side, then attach the gusset to the back piece and bind it as well. I will do all these steps off camera. When I come back, I will have everything bound and ready to flip right sides out. If you are new to binding and you're struggling a little, I have several videos on how to bind, and if you need that, just let me know in the comments. I'll definitely give you a link for that. I have my pip and my willow completely done. Everything's bound. Everything's ready to be turned right sides out. I do want to make note that on the back of the bag, there is a little bit of extra bulk, especially where I used vinyl on mine, and then I had webbing for the strap connectors and things, and my strap bar. Be careful if you choose to use webbing. Just make for sure that you're using materials that your machine can handle if you're sewing on a domestic. Mine could handle it, but it was a little tricky. My needle kind of bogged down a couple times. I had to hand crank. Not a big deal at all. Just wanted to make note of that. You can see right here that thickness of that seam there. Just a couple of spots down below where we have the webbing. Other than that, the gusset fit perfectly, no problems. I'm going to go off camera, and you can see I used 2 different types of binding because I ran out of this one. It's okay, I'm not too worried about it. But I'm going to go off camera and turn these right sides out, and then we'll come back and look at them and just talk about the rest of the bag. Both of my bags are done. I love the shape. I feel like this is a really good size. For the small one even, you could definitely fit a full-size water bottle in there and plenty of room left over. For the willow, wow, that's almost a weekend overnight bag. Plenty of room in both sizes of this bag. Let's talk a little bit about the construction. When we look at the bottom, you can see my bottom's kind of rolling up and it's not sitting flat. That is because of the binding creating that extra bulk and pushing this down. What I'll do is I'll go inside, put my hand inside, push out those seams and clip them to kind of compress that so that it is able to sit flat. Other than that, this is not a hard sew. This is not a complicated sew or very time-consuming sew. The side pockets on both have that little bit of flare to it, so I could easily slip in my phone, a water bottle, or a wallet, anything you would want in there. That is plenty of room on that. So these are 2 different patterns. They will be sold separately or as a bundle. You can see the difference in them. I think it's a good size difference. Let's put these side to side and let's look at them there. Highly recommend the pattern. Plenty of room inside. Let me show you the inside. I actually haven't even done that yet. So you can see there's plenty of room in here. Definitely a very nice size bag. Let's open up the pip. Super cute. Let me just see if the pip will fit inside of the willow just to kind of understand. Yeah, it definitely does. So the pip fits, let me zip this up and show you, but it fits easily inside of there. There's still more room left over. Can easily zip that up. That shows you the size difference on these 2. So it can easily fit in there and still have room for other stuff. Great patterns, as always, with Backstitch and Baste. Their patterns are very common sense, easy to come together. Highly recommend them. All my materials for the exterior, and then one of the linings are from Jane R. Edwards. The other lining is from Oh So Lovely. And I think this vinyl is from My Little Shindig. The other one may be from My Punk Broidery. I'm not for sure. It's an older vinyl. I think this webbing was from So Majestic, and this was from So Girly Fun. Thank you so much for watching another tutorial of mine today, and I hope today in your sewing room that you're able to sew two of something today, and something that can help you whenever you're going out of town or traveling, or just to carry around things you need. Thanks so much for watching, and you have a wonderful day.